What's poppin', everybody? Hello and welcome to Popcorn Culture. My name is Ben Carlin and I am your host. Here with me today is my brother Jay, who will be in every episode.
Oh, my time is over, Ben.
You did so good.
Thank you. I will say I want to give myself a pat on the back, Ben, for navigating us through the treacherous waters that were episodes like 165 through 169.
Yo, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
I mean, it felt like quite a lengthy jaunt.
There's no look. I typed Pop Doc 170 today to like collect our notes for the day, and it was like a genuine sigh of relief that we had left the 160s. I'm not sure what it was about it, but like every single time I was like, we've been in the 160s forever. I'm not sure we're gonna make it. Like obviously it was only 10 weeks, but it seemed like so much longer.
No, I definitely understand where you're coming from. I mean, I suppose like we're here like what, March 7th as of recording. So
yeah,
like we're really that's comprised most of 2023 so far. And I feel like this sort of happens every single year, like where we enter a new year and everybody's like, okay, thank goodness the last one's over.
Yeah.
You know, then we start the new one and almost inevitably a whole bunch of bad stuff happens right away. And we're like, oh man, we thought last year was bad. So I do feel like it's been like a taxing past couple of months. It's felt like, and we're also like right in the middle of that like kind of cold part of the year, like where everything's just like a little bit like, you know, we're not getting a lot of sunshine.
It's like
and
threatening to be warm, but
it
isn't.
is. Yeah. That's definitely been the vibe in Roanoke, because it's like, it seems like it's resting demeanors right around like, you know, like mid 50s or something like that. We've had a couple of like warmish days. However, I feel like whenever you've got this unusual, shifty weather, you also run into what feels like the seasonal illness of choice. And you and I just this past weekend got to endure a quality bout of norovirus.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The norovirus hit the Carlin family at large.
I would say square in the teeth.
Square in the teeth. I mean, we had Pierogi Night last Wednesday.
Yes.
And I mean, by all accounts, a tremendously grand affair. Like once or twice a year, our mom will make the trip up to New York, and sometimes the girls will go with her, and they'll meet up with all of our aunts and our grandma, and they'll all have this like big pierogi party where there's like one special cheese that can like only be found like in one place in the country, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I know it's like one of these like weird things where I think because like New York City has like such a melting pot of like different like, you know, cultures and stuff like that. It's like a Polish cheese that they've used forever, and it's like it has to be that cheese,
right? And it's like, you think, I know what you're thinking, like, can't you just order it online? And like when I was a kid, I was like, certainly there's a way, like other places must sell it, and it was like, no, this is really the only place. And like I remember growing into adulthood and being like, you know what, I bet you can buy that pierogi cheese online now. And it's like, you still can't.
You still can't. Yeah, I know. It's like it's this like really unusual thing. I think it's called bag cheese or something like that. Like
it's got a terrible name.
I know, yeah. I think it's like literally like there's some type of it's almost like, I think mozzarella, for example, as far as cheeses are concerned, is like a fairly like young cheese, like not aged for very long.
Yeah.
I think it's very similar to that, like where you create this like concoction of cheese mess and you put it inside of a bag and it drips or something.
It's like a wet. Yeah, you're right. There is like what looks like a net and a lot of like white drippiness coming out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Ben, you know what? Speaking of cheese,
okay,
I need to like confirm a memory with you.
Okay,
from childhood. Okay?
You were asking the wrong person. You need to take a mirror out of your pocket and ask yourself, because you will be the one who remembers it. But go ahead.
No. This is whether or not this was a shared experience, or whether it like the phrase. Hold on, let me make sure I'm reading it correctly.
Okay.
Off of the notes, because I wrote it in here. The phrase that came up this week was Limburger cheese.
Limburger
cheese. Does that like tickle any memory in your brain?
I feel like really very deeply, vaguely,
okay,
but I can't remember if like what I'm actually remembering is like the last name of like a middle school principal or something.
Oh no, that was also there was a Lindbergh.
Okay, so I wasn't wrong in that regard.
You're not wrong about that.
Okay. Give me more context, because so far I don't feel like I don't think it's like ringing anything. Like
Limburger cheese is just particularly well known for being extremely smelly cheese.
Okay,
and like I hadn't heard the even though I've eaten lots of cheese and I love cheese boards and charcuterie, I hadn't heard the word Limburger cheese in like over a decade, I think.
Okay.
And like suddenly it came up this past week. I can't even remember why, but it like all of a sudden these like distant like echoes came out and I was like, what is it about Limburger cheese? And I was like, smelly. It's smelly cheese. And then like I started like then I like opened the floodgate and it was like this was a constant joke in like childhood media was that Limburger cheese smells bad. This was like in like many a cartoon or
like
whatever.
you researched this and confirmed this, or you're remembering this.
This is what my memory was. I was like, I'm pretty. It just felt like a like in when we were kids in like the late 90s, early 2000s range. I seem to recall that Limburger cheese was like everyone's favorite smelly punching bag. It was like the butt of many jokes, literally.
Oh my
like,
gosh!
Do you remember this? Is this ringing a bell?
Not specifically, no. But like, I'm curious if it's like one of those things, like avocados or Brussels sprouts, or I'm trying to think of like any other like thing that sort of like comes into vogue, where it's like, you know, growing up, I don't think mom and dad ever gave us like avocados ever. I don't know if maybe that was just because like it just never occurred to them to do that. Like there are plenty of items of produce at the supermarket that I just never purchase at all.
No, I know. Yeah,
not for any reason. I just don't know about them or anything.
Yeah, it's like I remember like when we were growing up, like guacamole is not like a new word,
right?
So people have been making guacamole for a long time, which is primarily avocados,
right.
But like you're right, it wasn't like avocados were not what they are today when we were kids.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'd almost be curious if like during the 90s, this was the type of thing that like was in like every Southern Living magazine or like cooking channel show. It was like a very like in kind of thing.
Oh, Limburger cheese.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Or even if this was the case, like, you know, if you were talking about animators including it in the 90s, if it would have been really popular, even more likely in like the 80s or like late 70s.
Oh, sure. And like everyone came to know it as a smelly cheese.
Yes. Yeah. Or like a bunch of kids who grew up with it, like when their parents trying to like serve it were like, no, yes. I hate this stuff. And so then like eventually it was like, all right, you know what? I finally have the platform. I'm going to use that platform to bully my least favorite cheese that mom used to make me eat.
That's it. I mean, it does feel like something like that was going on because like I don't hear about this anymore. Like, you know, I've eaten plenty of cheeses. Some of them have like the smelly nature to them.
Sure. Do you like smelly cheese?
In general, yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, like
I'm like, I feel like I try to not be put out, like whenever like the cheese board comes, like, you know, like the charcuterie and everything, and there's like all the different stuff on there. I try not to be overly like squeamish towards things that, like I've never heard of or never tried, or like maybe like look a little unusual, or like a pickled like something. You know, it's like, I don't know what it is, but I'll try it. Like, you know, I try not to be that person, but I do also always find myself being like, oh man, these like, what is this, a nice crystallized cheddar? Like,
oh dude,
know,
cheese with crystals is always good.
Always the best. Always the best.
Yeah, like oh man, that's always super good. You're right. Whenever the charcuterie comes out and they like, no matter what, I will try every single cheese on the board regardless of what it looks like.
Okay.
That is for sure. I'm not afraid of it. If I don't like it, I just won't go back to it. But
sure.
I will always try everything.
Okay.
For
excellent.
Sure.
Excellent.
That is my stance on the cheeses.
Okay.
But
so anyway,
I want to know why it used to be such a punching bag, or if it was, and I'm just remembering that wrong, and why like in the modern day no one's making fun of Limburger cheese anymore.
I know whatever happened.
Whatever happened to making fun of Limburger cheese?
I know the good old days.
Exactly.
I wonder if this is like a weird like Mandela effect type of thing, like where like a bunch of people will like remember this, but nobody can find like a source of it at all, and it's like, why do we all remember this thing happening? It's like we all know it was a thing, right?
Wasn't it?
I don't even know. Like there was a part of me that even as you were like explaining this, I almost felt like partially like I was being like punked. Almost as if like you were setting me up for a scenario. I was like, do you remember this? Like this was a thing. Like we all made fun of this like made up word, and it was like, yeah, I do vaguely remember that. It's like, no, you don't, because I made it up. like that was like, I was like, I feel like I'm in a trap right now. I feel like
definitely
I'm
not setting you up.
Okay.
This is not some weird cheese gambit I'm running.
Right. I'm just trying to bring back the good old days. That's all. No, yeah, I do not remember. I do not remember whatsoever. Well, not even whatsoever. I feel like it does feel like it's like far off in the brain. And I'll be curious to see if like you brought this up. It was probably 10 episodes ago, like back in the 150s of the pop, the good old days again.
Not the 160s.
Not the 160s. Let's not even talk about that era. But I think at some point in time we talked about like crossworders and how they can like set the task for their brain to go and like work on something, and then that's sort of why like sometimes you can't remember a word, and then it's like dinner that night and you're like, I remember Limburger cheese.
Yeah.
You know, and you're like, so I'll be curious to like let a piece of my brain go and like and work on it and see if it can't
my gosh. You're gonna wake up at 3 a.m. this morning and be like, Alice, Limburger. She's gonna be like, what? I don't care.
I am completely uninterested in this new thing that you just figured out. Alternatively, the other thing we talked about recently was like the whole Bing Bong situation from Inside Out, and like a memory going into like the dump, so to speak, like where it dissolves into nothingness. And the question was sort of like, you know, like we saw Bing Bong in the movie Inside Out disappear, and the question is like, if she was shown pictures by her parents of Bing Bong, or like had the song sang back to her, it's like, would she remember it? And it's like, part of me is starting to think like, I don't think she would at all. I think that like literally she could be told a thing that she did. She could be shown evidence,
right?
But it's
that
like
she did it.
That she did it, and it's like it doesn't matter. It's like if that memory has faded away, then it is like it's just gone. Right. It's like, and that could be how it is with me in this particular punk cheese.
Like at some point, your little brain jelly beans are like, do we think Ben needs to know about the Limburger cheese jokes? And they're like, just dump it.
It's like nobody's made that joke in at least 15 years.
Yeah, it's out of vogue.
It's out of right.
Like, does he know what Vogue means? Not right now, but it's not going to matter.
So anyway, so that all of that to bring us back, I think ultimately to Pierogi Night.
Pierogi Night.
Yeah. So
we were talking about norovirus.
We were talking about norovirus. So this was a pretty big event over the weekend. You even said like wake Alice up at 3 a.m. It's like we're going to come back to that because I do owe her a waking up at 3 a.m.
Well, if there's no better reason than Limburger cheese.
I know. Definitely better than the reason she gave me. Well, at least my perception of it at the time. But yeah, so we as a whole big family got together. So like everybody was at mom and dad's house, and mom had this like huge, like she had like multiple pans on the stove, and she's making all of these like handmade pierogies, and it's just like this very like super like for our childhood, like incredibly nostalgic, but also just like a really fun, like delicious meal. And it was like outstanding, like really, really, really good.
Yeah. If you don't know what a pierogi is, it's basically just like a Polish ravioli. It's a dough pocket. It's like a dumpling filled with cheese.
Yeah. But I feel like the dough has almost got like a very subtle like sweetness to it that contrasts very nicely with the like the butter that you cook it in, and then like just like a sprinkling, like a dash of salt on top.
You want that salt on there.
I know. Oh man, so good. You
get them right out of the skillet. Woo!
I know.
They're good.
So mom, if you're listening, you absolutely crushed Pierogi Night. It was really fun. We loved it. However, it meant that our entire family was together. So like your whole family, my whole family, our younger brother Tyler, his whole family, mom and dad, all in mom and dad's house. And the next day is Thursday, which was just like a pretty regular work day for us. Friday morning, though, we are basically slated, you and I, to get up first thing in the morning, get in the car, and we were going to be driving 7 hours to Ohio, where you and I were going to be attending an event at the University of Miami of Ohio called Recon, which is like the best description I've been able to give it is sort of like a Comic-Con on like a university level, and it's just like a group of super like excited people about like all coming together to enjoy these things.
I think the group putting it on was called the League of Geeks.
Yeah, the League of Geeks. Yeah. And you and I were going to be there and do like a round of our in-person trivia show that we do like on Jay versus Ben. If you've ever watched us on like a trivia night or anything like that, it was gonna be so much fun. We were really like looking forward to being there. It was gonna be really cool. But back, I guess, rewinding just a little bit to that Thursday night before, we had kind of an interesting situation that went down, which is that my wife Alice went to like a local concert, and it was like, this cool local band that was playing and everything, and like she was going out with like, all of her friends, and like while she was there, obviously enjoyed like some libations.
Yep.
And she was there with my sister-in-law, Sammy. And so, Mike and I were hanging out at our house, just like chilling around the fire. They get home from their concert, get out of the Uber, like pop over, and like they have definitely like had fun.
They're pretty libacious.
They had fun. And so, Mike and I are sitting there, like we've just been chatting, like, for the past like 2 hours, like whatever. And they are just like, I don't know. It was really funny. But, as the night went on, as some people may be aware, sometimes overindulging in a libation can cause other side effects, such as sponges. So, at like 3 o'clock in the morning, got back to it. Look at me go.
Boom.
Alice wakes me up. And if there is one thing that she absolutely and completely and unequivocally hates, it is having sponges. Oh. Like this was like a big deal related to like even entering the stage of our life that would involve pregnancy at all, because it was like a lot of pregnancy comes with a lot of nausea, and it was like something she was deeply, deeply concerned about, like such a kind of fear around having sponges that it was like maybe we just won't do it at all. Like that was, that's the basis for it. So anyway, she wakes me up from like an absolute dead sleep. And at this point in time, I'm like, I have to get up early because I have like a trip I have to take tomorrow. I have a long drive, and I know it's going to be raining the whole way there. And like I know you went out and had a lot of fun tonight, and like that's good for you, but also I gotta sleep.
That was your decision.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's like I'm not trying to be unsupportive, but also like, I know how you feel about this particular topic. I will try to be helpful, but she's also like and generally inconsolable in this particular situation. So doing my best, but woke up from a dead sleep, whatever. Also knew that like it was probably somewhat self-imposed by the night that she had prior. So anyway, I end up having this like very long night of not really getting a whole lot of sleep and trying to like help her and, get like a Gatorade and a cup of ice and ginger ale and, medicine and all the rest of like whatevers and everything. So, wake up in the morning, she's still struggling with it, so I'm trying to get like Addie together, trying to coordinate with you. And I'm like, well, let me see if I can just like get Addie down for her first nap. And, like that way you can come over and pick me up, and like Addie will already be asleep. Allie can continue to rest until like, Addie wakes up, and hopefully at that point in time, she'll just be feeling better and have like slept it off and everything. So all of that happens. You come and pick me up. We're like sitting in the car outside of my house.
And pause.
Now
we'll back up to my house.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So it's Thursday evening, and Beth has decided to go out to book club with some of her friends at a local restaurant called Bloom. And, as ever, they're just chatting about their books, having some appetizers and some libations and stuff.
Naturally.
One or two.
Everybody was just like, really what I think it was is that we were getting ready to go out of town for like a full weekend, which is a lot of work on them to then tend to the households, obviously. And as such, good for them for being able to go out and like have like one last night of fun. However,
So Beth comes up, and she honestly, I think she only had like one drink or something. So it wasn't like a lot by any means. And we go to bed, and we wake up in the morning, and Beth expresses that she is like not feeling super great, but is like, could that have just been from one drink? Like, am I such a lightweight, or did I not drink enough water, or was I just dehydrated? Was it just stronger than I thought? And it's just like, I guess she was like, had like a little bit of headache, a little bit of queasiness, and it was just like, well, I guess that can happen. That can happen.
There is this thing I feel like I keep telling Alice lately. It's like I feel like I can tell I'm getting older.
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Well,
when me and Big Steve were down in Orlando for the Pokemon tournament.
Yes.
It was like it was Saturday evening. We just been through 9 rounds of Swiss, and neither of us had qualified for day 2. So we were just like, we had a blast. We were like, we're both starving because you don't have many opportunities to eat. Right. We went to the bar. We each had 2 old fashions, and the next morning, I was wrecked, and I was like, I couldn't believe it.
Right,
you know, I was
right.
like, that just wasn't that much.
Right.
And yeah, it was a very bad morning for me. I was able to recover, but so yeah, Beth is feeling this way, and I think and she's like feeling really anxious about it. Like, you're about to leave, and I'm like, yeah, but you've sort of been feeling anxious all week, and we'll keep an eye on you, but I think you're probably just, maybe a little hungover or something.
Right, right. Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm getting Luke ready for school, and he starts to tell me that, like, his stomach isn't feeling so good. And I'm like, okay, yeah, sure.
Right, right. Yeah. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I've heard this before.
I've done this before.
Yeah, I've done this before. I remember it. And he's like, yeah. So I'm like, what? Yeah, sure it is. I've heard that. Yeah, I'm not really buying it so much.
Yeah. And of course, like, you're still in that mindset as well as like, you got like stuff to do. Like, it's these are busy mornings usually, like, to get out of the house and get on the road and everything.
Not to sound like I'm trying to be like really dismissive of everyone's problems or anything.
Right.
Which is how it sounds retroactively given what happened. But in the moment,
it was a lot less obvious.
Yeah, it was much less obvious. But so I am eventually, I get Luke to preschool and I drop him off there, and he seems totally fine. And
right.
Beth seems like she's like maybe feeling a little better, and I'm out the door and I've packed up and I'm going to pick you up, and you call me and you're like, yeah, Alice is really hungover from last night, and and I think you said maybe you had like an uncomfortable trip to the bathroom yourself or something.
Yeah, it was like one of those things, but like similar to so many other situations, like, people like when they travel, for example, it's like not uncommon for like your whole like digestive system to sort of be like a little bit like thrown off because you're not living a normal like situation. And even for me, I was like, I had a really like bad night of sleep, so like, like I'm kind of anxious about leaving, I've just got like a lot going on. I really know how like Allie's gonna handle everything, especially if she doesn't start feeling better soon. And so like it's the same type of thing where I'm like yeah, like, my stomach's been like a little like off this morning or whatever, so like plop in the car or whatever, and then
not only that, I should say that in the week leading up, the day before, we had gone out to eat at a Mexican restaurant.
Oh yeah, right.
And you in particular had gotten this like just massive burrito.
Yeah, it was
just massive, and it was like, yeah, I can see where maybe you'd be feeling a little uncomfortable this morning. So like, you had all these reasons competing for what was not the case, but suddenly it was like, wait a minute. Alice isn't feeling good, and Beth isn't feeling good, and Luke said his stomach wasn't good, and Ben had a problem, and it was like, this is starting to be a lot of coincidences.
I know. Yeah. So you and I are sitting in the car, and we're like literally like, because that's the other thing too, is like we made like these people had reached out to us to participate in this event like months and months and months ago. And so like, you're sitting there and like you're looking at like like the pieces of like the puzzle like lying before you, and it's not like abundantly clear just how bad it is, or like whether or not you are at the point where you are going to like have to reach out to the folks who have invited you to partake in this event and tell them you can't be there.
Right. It's like on our end, we're like really, really wanting everything to be okay, because like we have this like prior commitment. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And like, you don't want to be overly like loosey-goosey with that, right. like it's the type of thing like where we were like included in at least like on the website or like marketing materials and stuff like that. You don't want people to like get to their event and be like, well, these guys weren't there. So like I think we're really having to like face down that decision. But the other issue is that we are now like we're 7 hours away, and if you and I are about to also go down,
right,
then it's like you're talking about a 7-hour car ride where all of a sudden it's like, oh dear, like we don't want to be trapped in the middle of like like West Virginia or whatever on our way.
Yeah, and like all of a sudden like we're screwed, and then it's like also you don't want, even if we were both fine, you don't necessarily want to be away if every other member of your family starts going down.
That's the other, the other huge bit as well. Yeah, it's like it's hard enough to run everything solo, let alone be sick and then be sick too.
Doing it, So we decide we're gonna just reconvene in an hour and see where everyone is, because things seem like they're getting worse. At least, especially on Beth's front, things like went down for her.
Yes.
So we return home, and like Beth just gets in bed. We put her to bed. Like Nick and Nate seem like they're doing good. It's like time to go pick up Luke. I'm like, I'm just going to drive them around for a while. I'm going to let her sleep, give them some quiet time. We'll go get like a fun lunch since Dad's home for lunch today or something.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm like driving the kids around, and we went to go get some Chick-fil-A. And like when I pick Luke up from school, which I don't normally do, like he sees me and he's like, "Oh my God, Daddy!" Like so excited. And then it seemed like I was like, you were feeling fine. I knew it. But then it like I could almost like watch him remember like, "Oh yeah, I'm not feeling good." And then so he starts like saying that again, and I'm like, "Oh, man, I can't believe you're picking this back up."
Right.
Yeah. Of course he's not. He's not feeling good.
Right.
So we go through and we get some lunch, and we all of us, on the way home, he keeps saying his stomach's not feeling good. And like, yeah, sure enough, once we get home, it hits Luke, and I'm like, oh, this is bad.
Yep.
I'm like, oh, uh-oh.
Things have gone
Things have gone. Now two people are down. And I'm like, now Nick and Nate on the other hand seem fine. They eat their food. They are just playing. They're running around. No big deal.
Right.
So I've got like Luke up in his room, just kind of recovering, and Beth is asleep. And I go to, it's like maybe a couple hours later, I go to change Nick's diaper, and I'm in the middle of doing that. And all of a sudden Nate walks around the corner, and it's just sort of like dripping out of his mouth.
Oh,
like,
no.
I'm sorry for the description. And I'm like, oh no, Nate. Oh, I'm like, this is bad. Something just changed. This is bad. Okay, you stand there. I got to finish this. Hold on. And I'm like, I finish with Nick as fast as I can. And then I wipe Nate down, and I like change all of his clothes and get him like, upstairs and like try and quarantine him away. And I come back downstairs, and I see that him coming around the corner was really the end of the situation.
No.
And he had like this, there were sponges been on the ottoman and on the rug and then in the kitchen, and like the whole way there was this gigantic trail of sponges that he had made as he walked over to tell me about the problem. And I was like, this is the absolute worst. This is terrible.
Yep.
Oh my God. That was bad. And then then it was like, all right, it's quiet time. Everyone's going out for a nap. That's cool. We're good.
Yep.
We're good. And I was like positive that during nap time it was going to hit Nick, and I was like, this is going to be bad. I'm going to have to clean up his crib. It's gonna this is just a nightmare.
Yeah,
this is my nightmare right now. We've definitely canceled the trip by now.
Oh yeah. At this point we've realized like these were not coincidences, nor were they hangovers.
Oh yeah. Now it's very clearly a virus going through, and like reports are coming in from like Tyler's family, and like mom and dad don't feel good, and it's like, oh no.
I know.
Oh,
yeah. It's
no.
just like, man,
This is bad.
Everything has gone off the rails.
Everything's gone off the rails.
So similarly, like, so now it's like Friday night, and like, I've been trying to take care of like Allie and Addie all day now, because I mean at this point in time, like I've basically just already stayed. We both stayed home from work at this point, trying to like take care of the families. We're not on the trip, and like I'm like sitting, and we have this like rocking chair in our living room, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, is it cold in here? And Alice is like, oh no. And I'm like, I'm like really cold.
Oh no.
And so like it's the same thing. So like I'm sitting there, it's like I go and like put on like a sweatshirt, and I've got like my hood up over, and I'm like curled up in a ball like on like the rocking chair, and I'm just sort of like bobbing back and forth, and I'm like I can like feel things getting worse. And like this is the other problem with everybody around you in your immediate proximity being sick, is that like you're literally watching your future unfold before you.
Like, it's the waiting game. You're like, it's gonna get me.
I know.
And then it's like you start feeling bad, and you're like, do I just feel bad because I'm worried about feeling bad, or do I feel bad because I do feel bad, or could it be both?
Yeah. So I ended up having a situation similar to yours as well, where so like at this point in time, like I'm starting to feel like really bad, and like Alice is just like exhausted because she had like no sleep the night before, and she's had a long day and everything. And so then like we're in the kitchen, and we're trying to like wrap the like get like Addie like ready to go up to bed and stuff. And so she's like just walking around, and then she has sponges as she's walks into it, slips and falls in it, and it's just like, no, I know. It's so sad. And at this point in time, like I'm like, Allie is, I would say, exhausted, but like recovered, and I am like right on the verge of like the full thing like hitting me. And so then you're like in full parent mode, which I think it's like literally like I think it's a thing. Like sometimes you need to survive the situation, and you are like able to like almost set aside your own like feeling bad in order to like help the situation.
Yeah, like you're like your brain is like rallying.
Yeah, exactly. So I have this like, where I'm able to like successfully like, we're able to like, Allie's got Addie in a bath in the sink, and I'm like cleaning up the floor and trying to do all this, that, and the others and everything. Anyway, we eventually got through it. It ended up being just like a really long and odd weekend of like being on the couch and completely just like...
Yeah, that's exactly how it was at our house. Yeah. Nick did make it through nap time, but not 1 second longer.
Right. Oh, gosh.
Yeah. I remember getting him like, oh my God, maybe you're going to be okay. I got him out of his crib. Sponges. I was just like, I just finished cleaning the whole downstairs.
Right. Yeah.
This is, oh man, this is bad. Fortunately, I personally never got the sponges. I think I definitely still got it. Like every other symptom was there. I had the headache and the achiness and terrible nights of sleep and just overwhelming exhaustion, which I feel like I'm still dealing with.
No, yeah, I get the exact same thing. Yeah, so because I never got the sponges either, but I was supposed to run 16 miles for my marathon training on Sunday, and so it's like it's Friday, and the guys that I run with all knew I was going out of town, so like they weren't really counting on me being there, but then it was sort of like, okay, well maybe now I can be there, and then I was like, oh no, maybe I'm not going to be able to be there.
Yeah.
So like I'm going back and forth with them all weekend, and like I'm like, all right, well maybe I'll just run like 8 on Sunday. So like I'm like lacing up my tennis shoes and stuff, and I'm like walking around the house getting ready to like go out the door to do it, and it's just like I'm like, oh no, I'm not okay. I'm like, all I want to do is sleep. Like I just want to go and like fall on the couch. So miserable weekend. Didn't make it through it.
It was a bad weekend.
Yeah.
One of the worst.
Yeah, right.
One of the worst.
So sorry, Recon, that we weren't there.
We weren't there. That was our journey through norovirus. I'm sure you all wanted all of the messy details.
All of the messy details.
For sure.
All right, time for a transition.
Okay, Ben, I had a flashback recently to an earlier, a very early episode of The Pop where we were talking about our like complete ignorance of music.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with it?
Am
you remember?
Am I familiar with our? Yeah. No, I live that life, Jay.
Yeah.
It's not like a recall type of thing. It's like a part of who I am.
Okay. Yeah. So this past weekend I had a very similar situation to where like I just started like revealed my ignorance about something else.
Okay.
That I felt like fairly embarrassed about. I was like, oh man, that was such a leap in my mind that I feel like still makes sense, but obviously was just wrong. It was just uninformed. And it was about malls. Okay. So after everyone started feeling a little bit better on Sunday afternoon, we decided we would venture out. Beth wanted, she had like ordered something online and just needed to go pick it up in the store from the store Aerie. And when she came out, I was like, man, I have not really known you to ever shop at like Aeropostale. And she was like, I don't, like I haven't. That's not where I just was. And I was like, what? And so I in that moment, I'm like a bunch of like things are colliding in my brain. And I'm like, I think for my entire life, when people have said Aerie, I thought they were just using that as shorthand for Aeropostale, which they're not. They're just different stores entirely. Or I thought that they were like, that Aerie was like an offshoot of Aeropostale, which it also isn't.
Okay, that is what surprises me, because I would have thought that like, isn't Aerie spelt like AERIE, and like Aeropostale is like AERO.
Yeah.
So like I absolutely would have thought that like, yeah, like that it would be like I don't know how, I think there's like a Victoria's Secret and then there's like a Pink, you know,
right,
and like those are like, they're like the same stores but like different like target, you know, demographics or whatever in terms of like who like would shop there. One being catered to like a younger crowd, I think. So I would have thought that my exact same thought would have been that Aeropostale was more like for a younger demographic, and Aerie would be like the same people who shopped at Aeropostale but are now grown into adults.
Incorrect.
This would have been my exact thought. Yeah.
Incorrect. Apparently, what the actual story is that American Eagle back in the day used to have their
AE.
Had their brand of like I guess underwear, which was Aerie, and then that sort of grew into like its own brand and is now its own store, which is just like it's so Aerie is an extension of American Eagle, not related at all.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. This is it's, I can see it because again, you have American Eagle as AE, and so it's like, oh, okay. It's like a fun.
There it
I can
is.
see where like they would have thought it was like a fun pun on their name while creating like a subline within their brand. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was just my like, man, I just felt so dumb about that.
Like for not knowing something.
Yeah. But then it got me like, then Beth and I started talking as we're talking about or as I revealed my ignorance on the situation.
How embarrassing.
I know. And she was like, did you ever have like a perceived tier structure of like the coolness value in high school of the stores at the mall or anything?
Well, I mean, like in my mind, like I remember, I feel like we went through phases as kids. Like I remember when growing up, like the moose symbol in our family, I feel like was something like we really like gravitated to.
Yeah.
Like I remember that like I think we've talked about it possibly on the pod before. I can't remember, but like, I at one point in time had started calling moose flankers.
Yeah, flankers.
With a silent G on the front.
Silent G.
Obviously.
Yeah.
And so like flankers kind of ended up being this like
family joke
/ mascot thing. And like our grandparents are from like the Adirondacks, where I feel like moose are potentially present. Yeah. Like it seemed like there was like one year where I don't know if like mom and dad had like told them the joke, the gag or whatever, but
it seemed like, I think not. It was just this like funny blending of things that all worked out where like our core family was like sort of joking about moose a lot, and then we went to grandma and grandpa's and they had just gotten us a bunch of Adirondack themed things that had moose on them, and it was like, oh man, and then it like really like
solidified it.
Solidified everything.
Yeah. We even had a dog named Moose.
Yes, we did.
At one point in time. And so like the whole moose thing I remember became like really big, and then that's also I think like the symbol for Abercrombie and Fitch.
Yeah, they had for some reason.
Yeah.
You know how this like tropical brand went for moose?
Moose.
Yeah.
I don't even know like what the basis for Abercrombie is, but yes. So that I remember that being a thing, and I remember like getting my first ever like Abercrombie shirt with the moose on it and thinking that it was like I couldn't wait to wear it to school.
Yeah.
To be like, I have my moose shirt.
Yeah.
It was like, I was really, but like to me, that's what it was. It was like, it was less even that it was like Abercrombie and more that like I had a shirt
with a moose
on it,
yeah.
which I thought was cool. And then I went through like my sort of era with PacSun, where I would go and wear like a lot of like Billabong or Hurley or Quicksilver. I'm trying to think of other Volcom.
Yeah. All the skater brands.
All of those sort of skater brands. So I was really into that for a good little stretch of like my high school years. And then I remember sort of as I was graduating out, I feel like Hollister like really, really hit as like the thing. And I think their symbol is like a bird maybe.
Yeah. But so was Aeropostale. And American Eagle.
Yeah. But so I don't know. I remember that was like the closest I could have to it. And I don't even know if it's a hierarchy or just literally like which one felt like it was in at any given point in time. That being said, I don't think I've ever owned anything from Hollister before.
I don't think I ever owned anything from there either. I remember really coveting owning things from Abercrombie and Fitch. Like that was like, this was the coolest. If you had clothes from here, this was the coolest place.
Right. Yeah. It had like a very prominent like storefront at our particular mall as well.
It was definitely like, especially at our mall in Roanoke, where we didn't have like every single store imaginable.
Yes.
Like I think it definitely was like or at least the perceived top tier store.
Right. Yes.
For high school students.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's like, I don't know that we had hit, I think probably at some point in time, like other things like Lacoste maybe had found their way into the equation.
Oh, sure.
Or like Ralph Lauren.
Right.
But like, as far as like, specifically like those mall brands, I think it was really, I would have said Abercrombie was at the top, maybe American Eagle after that. And then I probably would have put like Aeropostale and Hollister and everything else all in the same
bucket. Right, all in the same bucket down there.
I'm doing my best to remember these things.
I know.
It's been so long.
It's been so long, but also I feel like it's so different these days because people don't shop at malls as much.
Right.
It's like there were maybe 6 or 7 stores at the mall where most of your clothes came from, and like where most of your peers' clothes came from at the same time. Whereas now you just sort of shop online a lot, and there's so many more brands
Yes.
that it's less of like a personality association, I feel like.
Right. No, it's a good point though. Like one of the things I hadn't really given like a whole lot of consideration is the fact that like as high school students, we were all predominantly shopping from like the same stores, the same like seasons worth of like clothing items or whatever. But the other thing that I think is very surprising to me is I do not remember many instances where I would get to school wearing like a new t-shirt and someone else would have the same one.
I know, right? Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's like that's surprising.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So, like, do you have like a hierarchy here? Like,
I don't know. I remember thinking like, yeah, Abercrombie was very cool, but then it was like also easy to like sort of dunk on because like if you went in there, the music was really loud and they like pumped the cologne around.
I feel
stuff.
like that was the thing. Was like I feel like at some point in time, everybody realized the smell was so obnoxious that it was like I feel like people would make jokes about like, oh my gosh, I walked past the Abercrombie and I smelled like it for 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and it's like.
So there was that, but then I feel like in a way Hollister came to Abercrombie's rescue in that regard, because if you went in Hollister, the shopping experience was like 10 times worse in every way. It was like the lights were like Harry Potter, Deathly Hallows, part 2.
Oh,
everything
sure.
is it's like super dim lighting. Meanwhile,
here's your flashlight.
You thought Abercrombie smelled? Guess what? It's worse in here. You thought the music was loud down there? It's louder.
Right.
Like, no, this is sensory overload. And but did you see the roof you had to walk under when you walked in the store? So there was that.
It's just like you're at a real beach.
Yeah. So no, I didn't. I personally never I don't think I ever owned anything from Hollister. So I think Abercrombie. But it seemed like they were on the same tier to a lot of people. That was the perception, at least, that these are like almost the same.
Okay.
And then American Eagle certainly was like right there, right under it.
Okay.
But like at a way more affordable level.
Sure.
Like 50% off more affordable.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the other thing too is that like disposable income during this phase of life was so outstandingly minimal.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
I do. I mean, I remember that was like my PacSun thing. That was like I would love to go in there, and my favorite thing, especially by like my senior year of high school, was the hoodies.
Yeah.
I really, really liked the hoodies. In fact, there is one that I would love to get back desperately. It was a Burton hoodie, and it had this like 3D design on it. So it was like white, but then the design itself was like green and blue, I think. And the interior of the hoodie was like a gray fuzzy, and it had a silver zipper, and it was like, oh man, it was such a cool hoodie, and like everybody always thought it was awesome.
Yeah.
Except for like that one person who was like, I think her name was Chelsea. She was like, it hurts my eyes to look at. And I was like, well, then you don't have to look at it.
I know. But I'm sure every time you wore it, she went out of her way to remind you.
I know.
She didn't like this hoodie.
Yeah. It was like, but it's like, but when I wear it, it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And so as an adult, this is like one I've like literally gone on Poshmark probably in the past 6 months and like tried to find it. Yeah. Like if anybody's like got one like pristine from like forever ago, I'm like, oh, it'd be so cool.
Well, maybe they do, Ben. I mean, we got me another, yellow shirt with a red guitar player on it.
This is so true. I mean, I think you say red shirt with a good, good guitar, something or another. I think it was just blood or ketchup, but I'm not. Jury's still out on that one. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, so question for the little colonels at home was what was your favorite high school brand?
Or did or is this still a thing? Is it like a, I don't know. Does this hierarchy of like mall shopping still exist?
Yeah.
Or
okay, here's another one that I thought was very interesting is the brand Champion. I don't know if you've seen this. Like it's like become repopularized.
Yeah.
I feel like, but at some point in time, I feel like if you were to have like a pair of like Champion brand sweatpants, this was almost the type of thing that like you almost certainly got at like a TJ Maxx kind of store.
Right.
It's like they're like bulk excess, kind of a dime a dozen, sort of everywhere. But I do remember like as an adult going back into PacSun and realizing like these are here now. Like the thing, like on the walls and everything. They're like Champion, like like the C,
the
like
C
kind of
with the red and
embroidered.
the blue.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, Oh, that's interesting. It's interesting. I imagine it's what, like, for our parents, watching like Converse shoes really come back into like the centerfold as like a super fashionable thing to wear. It's kind of like, oh man, like those? Like the canvas and rubber?
It does seem like, when we were growing up, Champion was like at a low point, and now it is like back at a very high point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I wonder if we'll see it dip and dive again.
Oh,
you know,
hard to say.
I know.
This is the way.
This is the
this is how the fashion works. Apparently,
we totally understand fashion.
Definitely understand fashion.
Welcome to our podcast.
Welcome to our podcast. I remember like graduating out of like, getting like a real job and needing like adult, just like casual clothes, I suppose, and discovering like Banana Republic in my early 20s or so.
Yep.
Like when I had like disposable income, and remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is my new favorite store, because we never had one. So whenever we found one like out traveling, I was like, I'm just gonna buy a lot of clothes here.
Right.
Yeah, this is my thing. But the funny thing was that like this is another thing like I didn't realize. Like I remember growing up, like I don't think I ever owned anything from the Gap.
The Gap.
I still don't think I ever have owned anything from there. I don't know what vendetta I had against the store, but I was like, nope.
I once owned a Gap denim jacket.
There you go. It was awesome.
It was pretty boss.
Yeah, like, but if you would ask me like, do you want to go in there? I'd be like, I don't even want to go in the store. Not me. Not for me.
not for me.
And it's just like
not interested.
Not interested.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I don't shop at the Gap. Like, there's nothing wrong with the Gap, by the way, at all. This is just stubborn high schooler.
Right. Yeah. Like these are like constructs that come from no basis whatsoever.
It's like, this is how I would define myself.
Right.
So there was that. But then then I think like learning like behind the scenes that like Banana Republic and the Gap and Old Navy are all just the same company.
Yeah.
And it's just like these are just like different levels of the same store, basically, and being like, oh, interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's an interesting thought though, because I feel like it's something that I've picked up on a lot as we've gotten older. Like when we started this podcast, even like largely the entire premise was like strong opinions about weak things. Like we talked about that like a lot. Like, having like a diehard favorite kind of soda you buy at like the movie theater is like a hill you can die on type of thing.
Right.
And I think growing up, me and you and Tyler all did this in varying capacities. Like, like we were Hokies, so like we absolutely like despised the University of Virginia Cavaliers. And like, it was kind of like we had like built these very I mean, I wouldn't have even said that like at the time we would have even had the basis to call them strong opinions about weak things. Like I don't even know that I would have been able to say like, no, I care so much about this because like on the whole it doesn't really matter. You know, like when it comes down to it, like I'm being really intense because it doesn't matter.
Exactly. You know? It was like there was like a certain like natural realization that like it was okay to be intense about things that didn't matter.
Right. But like for a long time, I think I was just intense about things. And like I just had these intense opinions or whatever. And the older that I have gotten, and it was funny that you gave like that example about like the Gap, because I feel like I am like actively feeling all of these like constructs that I had in my younger years, like melt away a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like I don't even have the capacity to care about it that way. It's like I could shop there, I could not shop there. Like I don't really have like an opinion about it one way or another.
Like it means nothing to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But like anything, I don't even think that I hold these like weird little mental vendettas that I used to create. But sometimes I do still feel like I interact with people that still have these particular things, and I always it's like it's like an interesting curiosity to me to like almost to see if I could get somebody like, on record, like saying like, oh, I will never eat that thing, or, oh, I absolutely despise that place, or I would never attend a blah, blah, blah. If so-and-so is there or whatever. It's almost like I want to like document it. So like 10 years from now, I can just go back and be like, hey, this was a strong opinion you had at one point in time. Do you stand by it?
Yeah.
like let me play it back to you, because like, I bet you don't.
Yeah.
But I know today, right now, while we're talking about it, you do. You do care so much.
I think what's funny is that like you're right. Like a lot of these things just sort of melt away, or like nowadays I feel like I'm much more like self-aware that like it's just sort of fun to be intense about it, but like I don't really care.
Right.
But like every now and then, like one of these like old things will be just sort of like dusted off in the present, and it'll be like, like I won't realize that was like an intense thing I was doing.
Yes.
Like back in the day. So like I think maybe like the Gap is probably another great, just to use that as an example.
That's why I think it's a great example. Yeah. Cause it's like, but why?
Yeah. There's no, based on nothing. I don't like this store.
Right.
Yeah. Just cause that'll help define who I am. Whatever. But so like just using that as an example or something like or I think maybe it is a good example because like it's something that you could have had that opinion back in high school, and it's like it has not come up in over 15 years.
Right.
Like, no, it has been, there's just, you don't need to decide on a daily basis whether you're shopping at this store at the mall or something. It doesn't come up in conversation. You've just left it behind. But then, like, if, like, for example, Beth was like flipping through things online. It's like, oh, I found these cool shirts for the kids at the Gap. I'd be like, our children?
You're not gonna.
Wait a minute here.
The Gap.
Wait a minute.
We can't have that.
I can't be having that. It'd be like, why? It'd be like, well, this is how I've always felt. I'm pretty sure. Now I have no. Well,
certainly there was a good reason in there somewhere.
I'm positive I didn't like that store.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's like, and like Beth will very much be like, this sounds like an old Jonathan thing. Like just be very opinionated about something that didn't matter.
I'm very curious too, as well, if this is at all part of like, as you get older and you're trying to discover your identity in some capacity, it's almost like that is why having these really strong opinions ends up feeling like facets of yourself. Like it helps you feel like you better understand who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And it's like your life experiences so far have only brought you into enough scenarios. Like sometimes I'm always like envious of like the main character of a story who at like take Katniss or something from like the Hunger Games. Like, I mean, obviously you never wish that outcome on anybody's life, but like, it's like she absolutely had to discover, through this like gauntlet that she goes through, like who she is.
Right.
And for most of us at that age, like, you've never really been like battle tested. I feel like I gave a terrible example. Nobody should have to do what Katniss did, but it's like you have not gone through a whole lot of like independent life yet to where you have really, really, really started to like find yourself in the situation of like why and how do I feel strongly about the things I feel strongly about, and like so up until that point in time, you sort of have these like meaningless, in a way, like opinions about things that you've used as like those facets. Like this is how you've attempted to learn more about who you are in a way to demonstrate it to others.
Yeah.
But I think I wrote this in the show notes like weeks ago. I don't even know if I ever officially brought it up or if I ever did it proper justice as a topic, but there was a quote that was basically like, opinion is essentially the lowest form of knowledge. And I think that like when I was attempting to contextualize it for the show or like figure out how to like bring it to the surface, it was, I was having like a really difficult time figuring out how to say that, because I don't want to like go on here and like blast everybody for having opinions, because that doesn't feel like the sentiment that I was trying to express. However, I feel like now that we've kind of found ourselves inside of this example, it feels workable enough to where it's almost like at this young age, at a high school version of ourselves, we decided that like, oh yeah, the Gap, we're not doing it, like that's like something like we've defined ourselves by.
Right.
It's like, I think that's a great example of opinion being a very low form of knowledge. It's like, you're not basing it on anything. Like now as an adult, for example, I might look at a company like Patagonia, who has like good ethical practices like within the organization as a whole, like sustainable sourcing, proper pay, like,
right.
Everything is like done in like such a way that it's like, I might be like, you know what, I would like to invest, even though it's very expensive, like I would like to invest in a Patagonia like article of clothing because I know that like fair trade is involved, and that like the people who made it, were properly paid for making it, and that the materials are safe and good and reliable and will last a long time and all that type of stuff. But it's like that becomes like a much more informed assessment of like why you might support or endorse the brand that you might choose to do.
Right.
And I'm not even saying like in general you need to have this kind of relationship with every garment of clothing that you wear. I'm not like wearing Patagonia as I sit here right now or anything like that. But I just think it's sort of like an interesting look at the idea of an opinion.
Yeah.
And for me, like, I mean, if you listen to the show, you know that I spend just way too much time like rethinking everything I've ever thought and said for my entire life. So, I think it's like one of those things. But, a lot of times, like whenever I'm thinking about like a difficult topic, I like to think of it as like taking the object out of my head and holding it like it's like a rock or something and turning the rock over in my hands and examining it from all angles. And so like, that is almost something that like I would encourage in general is like, if you have like a really like vehement, like strong opinion, like I am so for or against this thing, take that idea out of your head and handle it and be like, and just ask yourself like, why? Like, why do you feel the way that you feel about this particular thing?
Right.
Because it could be very much like the case that it's like you decided early in your life that you didn't like, I'm not a fan of this particular store. And like, you never re-examine it ever again. And so as a result, you just never like it ever again.
Right. Like that's it.
Right. Yeah. It's like I decided when I was 16 that I'm not a fan of that place. And therefore now at age 36, still not a fan.
Right. I haven't thought about it since I was 16, but that's how I felt then. So I don't see what anything would have changed.
Right. Yeah. So take your opinions out of your old brain skull there and give them a gander over. Yeah. Yep. Anyway, you want to transition one more time?
Sure.
Okay, Jay, there's one last thing I want to talk about, which is heavy objects and their just absolute propensity to exist in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's no doubt.
This is a really weird one. So, I feel like for as long as I can remember, I have found myself in these positions of trying to move objects that shouldn't be moved. Or like
you constantly having to move big things.
Yeah. It's like, in a way that I can't like, I don't know if it's a situation where, like I want something badly enough that I'm just willing to endure the excessive difficulty that is involved with achieving said goal. Like, I think we gave the story several weeks ago on the pop about how when you and I lived together, right when I graduated college, when we started Super Carlin Brothers, I was like, man, it'd be so much fun to have like a hot tub in the backyard. And like we can have like this movie theater screen and like we'll have a projector and the projector can be on the screen and we can sit in the hot tub and hang out with our friends and it'll be so much fun. And so, I was like, I have a truck, like I can totally go get one. So like, I find the guy on Craigslist or whatever, and I drive out to the middle of nowhere, like, an hour and a half away from where we live. And I get this thing and it like the hot tub itself weighs like 800 pounds
right,
and
it's
like
huge.
Is like way too, like heavy for the payload rating, like of my vehicle,
truck, yeah.
And yet like there I am, like with my flashers on and like the front of my hood, like, the springs of my truck are, I'm literally like driving like a boat down the interstate, like 10 miles under the speed limit, just out of sheer fear that the like straps that are holding this thing in are going to come undone.
Right.
And this hot tub is going to go tumbling. I'm going to leave
down the interstate. Yeah.
Right. Like Indiana Jones Boulder. Nope. This is a hot tub barreling at, 50 miles an hour. It's like, so it's just like one of these things. It's like, it's like, oh my gosh, what, but I was so determined. I was so determined to like,
it's not worth not having a hot tub.
Right. So I shall find a way. And that's what I came up with. Or like as time went on, obviously, like, I've talked a lot about like my aquarium days, and like when I was a young kid, like, 15, 16 years old, like I would have been so jazzed at the opportunity to own like a 100-gallon plus aquarium.
Yeah.
Like that was something like that, like young me absolutely coveted. Like, I had my first job at Petland and I remember like people would come in and like, I think we had a 180-gallon aquarium. It was like $800, unattainable sum. I was just like, man, like nobody's ever going to be able to buy that. And one day I sold it and I remember it was like, I was like, oh my gosh, like they must be so excited. I think it sat there for like 3 years or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like forever. And so then like, as I grew into adulthood, one of the things that like started happening and has happened so many times since doing the aquarium stuff is that like, oftentimes if like someone is moving or a business is closing or even just a residence is moving, they'll have these big tanks and nobody wants to move them. And so they'll call you.
Yeah, and they'll like, can I donate them, or
can I donate it, or like,
Sell
if you come if you come and pick it up, it's yours. Well, 16-year-old me would have just like lost his hat over this. This would have been like nothing better. No,
Right.
it's like you're basically giving me free gold.
right.
I'll take it.
Excuse me.
I'll take it.
Right.
So I remember one instance in particular. There was a local restaurant, a seafood restaurant here in town. And I had actually maintained the tank for quite some time, but it was like 10 feet long. It was like 380 gallons or something like that, custom made. I think they built it like in place. And I remember the owner of the restaurant was like, "Yeah, we're closing. So like, if you want the tank, come and take it. It's yours." And I was like, well, obviously I'm going to take it.
Yeah.
like no problemo.
Should you have said no?
100% I should have said no.
Nope.
You're talking about you're talking like 600-700 pounds of glass.
Yeah.
Well,
the other thing it seems that I feel like I've noticed as an observer of people who move fish tanks a lot is that due to the nature of fish tanks, they are just big glass boxes that were previously holding upwards of hundreds and hundreds of pounds of moving water for years.
Yes.
Right. So, not only does that amount of movement in, heavy weight inside of a glass box tend to, affect the overall shape of it, but, then when you go to move it, you tend to have to put a lot of different forces on moving a what appears to be maybe weakened frame or something.
Sure.
It seems like moving a heavy used aquarium from one place to another place
compromises
the aquarium's ability to be an aquarium.
Sure. And I mean, that I can't say beyond a shadow of a doubt that we haven't observed that exact thing happen before. So that is definitely a thing. But I do remember so with this particular tank though, I had this I had a little van I was using at the time. It was like a minivan, except instead of having passenger seats in the back, it was just like an open cabin type of thing. And so these are all the weird conclusions that my mind would make. It was I have a commercial vehicle. I totally I can go and pick this thing up. No big deal whatsoever. And it's I go and put the thing in there and it sticks out the back 3 feet.
Right.
So at this point in time, all of my friends who have sworn me off forever for asking to participate in the movement of this gigantic glass box are okay, it's in the van. We're done. We're not touching it ever again. I don't want anything else to I don't ever want to be near that thing again.
Yeah.
So I had help to get the glass box out of the restaurant, which was dang near impossible and probably could have thrown backs out and all sorts of other things. But then it's in the back of my vehicle, which I then need for work the next day.
Right.
So I get back to my warehouse at the time to try to offload it. And I remember I am back there, I built a cart that if all I had to do was then slide off the back of the truck onto the cart, but of course the lips don't match perfectly or anything, so then I'm trying to maneuver it, and I'm trying to deadlift one end of it to put a PVC pipe underneath, so then it's got a roller bar situation type of thing, and I'm finagling straps and doing all sorts of madness. Anyway, so finally eventually by myself I got the gigantic aquarium out of the back of the van, and it's since doing Super Carlin Brothers, I would say that this is lessened considerably. However, in the past couple of weeks, our good buddy Gabriel, who has been moving his gym, which if just that sentence alone, I'm sure you can kind of imagine where we're going. Moving a gym, what do you lift at the gym?
Yeah.
Heavy objects.
Lots of weights.
All had to come up from a basement
Yep.
to go to the new location. All of that was mostly good. Went, helped him move all the stuff. No big deal.
Yeah.
Got all the weights up. We threw it in the back of a U-Haul, transferred it across town, was able to drop it in the new location. I was all is good, no big deal. I'm done. I did it.
I helped.
I did my friend deed of the year.
Yay.
And then, he calls me yesterday while we're here at work, and he's like, okay, so I went and bought some turf. And so very frequently gyms will have turf as like an area to do like the other mixed activities.
So you're not just like on the concrete.
You're not just on the concrete. And that turf usually actually comes from like a university, like a college that had it in like their football stadium. And periodically they have to go through and change the turf entirely because it's been worn out. They don't want to just like waste all that, so they sell it to gyms. So he went down and bought some in a trailer, and they are these massive, like 10-foot long rolls of turf, and they weigh 1,500 pounds a piece.
Oh my gosh.
And
that's so much.
Yeah. So, I'm like, yeah, like I'll buzz over there, see if I can't help you, like push them out of the back of the trailer or whatever. Nope. No way, no how. So, I arrive at the gym, and like we have to, the amount of finagling was absolutely absurd. But what we ended up having to do was tie weightlifting chains around a tree that just happened to be like next to or near the parking lot. Just that it was like one of those trees that like is growing on the side of like the abyss. It's like if you like fell beyond the tree, like you're still falling.
Yeah. You're going.
Right. It's like it's so far. So. I take my truck and I back up like the trailer to the tree. Then we've wrapped a rope through the middle. And this is like like a battle rope. Like if you've ever seen like Chris Hemsworth or something doing like the like up down thing.
Yeah.
It's like one of those things. And we've wrapped it all the way through the middle of the turf, and then we tied that to like the weightlifting chain, and then like tied that to the tree, and then I have the trailer hooked up to my truck, and I'm like driving the truck away so that like the thing gets like stuck in place. Anyway, it's just been like utter madness, and we finally got them off the back of the trailer, and then we couldn't physically move them from where they landed on the ground to inside the gym.
Right.
It's just like, oh my gosh, why am I always moving heavy objects?
I don't know. I was thinking about this too. I was like you keep telling me all these stories about like, you're like, oh yeah, I helped Gabriel move the gym. And I'm like, no one asked me to help. And I'm like, I go to the gym just as much as you do. And like, I feel like I've known Gabriel just as long. And I'm like, why wasn't I a part of this? And then I'm like, I guess I sort of was asked to help. And then I'm like, why did Ben end up doing this? Like, it's like, maybe I was asked that. Like, if like, it's just like, it's crazy to me that like, either you were asked way more directly than I was, or I don't know how you ended up so much more involved in it than I did, given our almost equal relationship to
the same
person and place.
That's a good question, and I have no idea. In the beginning, I don't know if there was some possibility that I really thought that owning a truck was going to be more necessary. Like this is another one of the classic Benisms. Like in my mind, I was like, I have like a medium-sized truck, right? That's probably all we need to move all of the gym to the new location,
right?
And then we fill up an entire U-Haul, and it's like, oh yeah, my truck really was not. So I would honestly say, that was probably a piece of it. Was like in my mind, I was like, he probably needs my truck,
right?
It's like he probably can't do it without the truck,
right?
And realistically, you almost could have done all of it without the truck,
sure.
But either way, I guess I ended up doing it. But the thing that I will say about all of it though is that like there is like this really bizarre sense of accomplishment that I do feel attached to like these challenges of moving these remarkably heavy objects, and I'm just like. It's like when you like do it and you've like successfully like thought engineered the situation enough using just your materials at hand. Because most of the time, for what it's worth, like the guy who loaded the turf into the back of the trailer for Gabriel had a forklift.
Right.
The guy like picked it up, ran it across the parking lot, dropped it in the back of the trailer. Like from Gabriel's eyes, like nothing was even remotely hard about this.
Right.
So it's like, this is absolutely like have the right tool. You're fine.
Right.
That's all you need. Like, makes no big deal. But who owns a forklift?
Right. Like someone just needed to rent a forklift. You guys could have been done in 10 minutes.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So probably as time goes forth, that is like one of those where someone would be like, yeah, I'm not thinking through how to solve it. Let's go rent a forklift.
Right.
Yeah. Or someone who has a forklift.
Sure.
And they can come and do it.
Right.
Anyway, so moving heavy things. Good fun.
Good fun.
Be safe out there. I am sore.
I bet you are. They look huge.
They were huge. I want to know a final measurement of the weight. I want like I want to bring like a little scale out and set it on there. Probably crush the scale.
Yeah. Need big scale.
Crunch. Yeah. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of The Pop. It's just been a hooting and hollering good time. I feel like we talked about norovirus and
I'm sure y'all loved that.
I love how the word sponges has maintained all throughout.
What is really funny about the word sponges is that similar to your wife, my wife absolutely unequivocally hates sponges or being spongy and having sponges or whatever.
Sure.
So anyway, I was like, oh, you know what? You know what's so great about having come up with the word sponges on the pop is I can use this in my regular life too, to avoid saying the real words.
Right.
You know, and it's like, but ironically, Beth finds the word sponges to be much more offensive than the actual word.
This is like I don't even know if this is a thing, but like word reappropriation or something like that. Like I do feel like there ends up being the case where it's like people often don't like the word like moist, but like I almost wonder if you just called it like bananas instead, like is it really the word that's the problem, or like
or is it like what the word moist represents? Is it the sound of the word moist?
Yeah, or is it or is it like can you just feel moisture when you think of it?
Right.
And therefore like you now associate like a negative sensation with the word, and it's like the word itself is fine. Like
right.
You know, I have no idea. I know that like was so often like, you know, that's like I even remember as a kid, like when I heard like what swear words were, it was like I almost thought that they were like magical spells that like when spoken like actually inflicted like some type of like visceral damage.
Right.
And it's like well they do because of the perceived meaning of the word.
Right.
And that's it.
That's it. Otherwise, they're just sounds.
They're just sounds. Yeah, they do nothing special otherwise. So I don't know. I always think that's interesting. Anyway, but what else did we talk about? We talked about mall brands. We talked about moving heavy stuff.
That's right.
I feel like it's just been a good old fashioned hooting and hollering good time.
Welcome to the 170s, y'all.
I know. It's gonna be. I think it's gonna be a magical decade of episots.
No doubt.
The next 10. Maybe that's how we'll refer to our episode batches. It's like we got really philosophical for that decade.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Ooh, man.
If you guys have any feedback for the show, you can send it over to popcornculturepod@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to support us on Patreon, we do very much appreciate it. We have what we call After the Final Pop. It's an extra 15 to 20 minutes after each week's episode, where Jay and I just talk about something we either didn't get to in the main show, we elaborate on something we did get on in the main show, or we just talk about something new entirely. You can check that out at the $5 tier at patreon.com/popcornculture. But otherwise, until next time,
Pop.